My life flows on in endless song amidst life's tribulations. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails renewed creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in our souls. How can we keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roar? I know the truth, it liveth. What though the darkness round me close? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to this rock I'm clinging. When love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble, weak with fear, at jubilation's ringing, and friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? All to the nations, north and south, our thoughts of love are winging. When freedom lives at hand and mouth, how can I keep from singing? When spring is born upon the breeze, a scent of flowers bringing, and winged shapes flit 'mongst the leaves, how can I keep from singing? The world awakens every morn, the hours to eons stringing, when always lives that e'er was born. How can I keep from singing? My life flows on in endless song amidst life's tribulations. I hear the real and far off hymn that hails renewed creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? Thank you.
Again, this is the Wilf Triennial Congress. We welcome to Legislative Advocacy, Uniting for Effectiveness. And we are just giving people a little time to sign in since it's a complex process. And this is the very first presentation in the first Wilf Triennial Congress to be held online.
I just want to welcome everyone. Our program on legislative advocacy will be starting in a few more minutes, and it will be moderated by Lenny Villagomez Reeves.
Now, our first speaker is in the category of too well-known to need introduction. And so I will only say that Dolores Huerta, who I've known since the 60s, was the co-founder and leader of the United Farmworkers and is the president of the Dolores Huerta Foundation, as well as the founder. And her nationally renowned work has included community and labor organizing, as well as contract negotiation, legislative advocacy, which is what we call lobbying, promoting women's rights, promoting community and empowerment of poor farm worker families and communities in California's agricultural Central Valley. Dolores Huerta has received many honors and medals and awards, among them the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Dolores Huerta.
Hello, everybody. And hello, Lenny. It's so wonderful to see you, even if it's only in Zoom. I knew Lenny when she was a very young 18-year-old, I believe, organizer and a tremendous organizer at that age. And I'm so happy to see that she continues to keep organizing, especially when it comes to women, because we know that we as women, and I like to say this, as Coretta Scott King said, that we will never have peace in the world until women take power. And I guess that is, of course, what your organization has been doing over the years, is building power among women. And I guess we're kind of waiting for the rest of the world to catch up with your organization, because you were so far ahead of everybody with the work that you were doing and saying, yeah, yes, we are the women, and we're an international group, and we're fighting for peace and freedom in our planet, in our world. And of course, right now we're having a hard time trying to get there, as we know, because unfortunately things have become, I think, harder for us than what they were before. But we know that we do have the power to create the kind of a world that we need. But it's going to take all of us to organize other women to join us and to help us, because unfortunately, we have some sisters out there that are still not activists. They're still not informed. They really don't understand why it is that we need to do so much work to bring peace and justice and freedom to our world. And we know that it happens right here. It has to start with us in the United States of America. And I'm so happy that you asked me to talk about advocacy, because this is, of course, what we're going to need if we're going to straighten up the mess that so many have made. And I'm not going to use the word men, okay? but and this is so important because it's really interesting. And when we talk to younger people, and they really don't understand what the power or even the process of advocacy is. And so I kind of like to break it down, because like many of you, our foundation, the Dolores Huerta Foundation, we do a lot of work on voter registration and getting people out to vote and informing them why they should vote. And we know a lot of our younger people, they're very active. They get out there and they march. We've seen this, the Women's March and the marches to end gun violence, the whole thing about police misconduct, Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement, etc. But a lot of our younger sisters and brothers, they don't understand that nothing really is going to be permanent unless we put it into a law. That there's got to be a law that can be implemented, where people can be held accountable, and if that doesn't happen, and also a law that is enforceable. And if this doesn't happen, that really it was just a lot of activity, bringing the message out to people, telling them why things are important. And this is the one thing that we really have to ingrain into every one of our younger people that are coming up, that you've got to also remember that in addition to marching and protesting, we've got to register to vote. And then we've got to vote for progressive people that are going to represent us, and hopefully more women. Because again, if there's a meeting out there and some board is having a meeting, and if they do not have 50% of feminists, and I'm going to use that word, feminists, at the table, we know that they're going to make the wrong decision. And so we've got to continue to push that we get more feminists electing to political boards, whether it be the school board, which is very important, our city councils, our boards of supervisors or commissioners, and of course into our Congress, into our Senate. And eventually, yes, ladies, it will happen. We will get the presidency eventually, that we can make that happen. So we really have to start really, you might say at the elementary political level, encourage young people to get out there and go door to door, tell people why voting is important, get them registered, and helping get the vote out, getting people to vote. And once we can get a good progressive candidate elected, then that is where we can get out there and say, these are the kind of issues that we want to pass. I have been so blessed in my life as political director, not only of the United Farm Workers and my current organization, the Dolores Huerta Foundation, but way back in the day, in the late 50s, when Cesar Chavez and I both belonged to a group called the Community Service Organization, CSO. There might be some folks here who might remember that organization. It was started in Los Angeles and East LA, and it went throughout the state of California. But, looking back at those times, we passed some important legislation that other states to this day do not have. One of the bills that I was really happy to pass was a bill that you did not have to go to a deputy registrar and where they would swear you in and that you could register to vote. That anybody who was a US citizen, 18, well, like I said, no, it was 21 years of age, that you could register somebody else to vote. And that transformed California. Today in the state of Texas, you still have to find a deputy to register you to vote. And those deputies are often under so much pressure, they can get arrested if somebody says that they did something wrong in registering somebody to vote. So that in addition to all of the voter suppression and intimidation, people have a hard time just getting registered to vote. They have to find somebody that will register them. And so they say there's many millions of people. I've heard the figure anywhere from 3 million to 7 million people in Texas that are not registered to vote. Okay, so we know that those are the basics. And of course, we know that all of these voter suppression laws are just being handled now in many, many different states. And so we have to say to our sisters in all those other states and our feminist brothers, call your senators and tell them that they've got to vote for the People Act that is right now in the Senate so that we can fight the voter suppression that is going on right now. And then, of course, once we get good people elected, then, of course, we do the advocacy. And again, many folks think, well, I voted and that's all I have to do. I elected this person and they're going to be okay. But it doesn't work that way because our legislators, they get a lot of pressure from the dark money, from the insurance companies, real estate, the petroleum, the tobacco people. And so we have to really stay on top of our legislators to make sure that they vote the right way. And we have to go to their constituents, whoever they represent, to put the heat on them when they're not doing the right thing. Michael Moore in his Broadway show said, when we get up in the morning, what do? We wash our face, we brush our teeth, and then we call our senators, okay? Then we call our senators. And right now, for us as women, there is a really important piece of legislation. It's called the Equal Rights Amendment for Women. Now, many women actually believe that we already have that, but we don't. And right now in the US Senate, we do have a bill that will give women equal rights because it will make it part of the Constitution of the United States of America. Yes, part of the Constitution of the United States that we as women are equal to men. But you know what? It's not going to pass in the Senate unless we can get rid of that filibuster. The filibuster that is keeping the Senate from being able to take up bills and to vote on them because they need 60 votes. And as we all know, the Senate right now is divided 50-50 with our Vice President, Kamala Harris, being the deciding vote. Now, last week, we were in Arizona and we delivered 15,000 postcards and emails to Senator Kirsten Sinema. a woman, a Democratic senator that was elected in Arizona by the Democrats, and a lot of the Bernie people, a lot of the young progressives voted to get her elected. But she is now saying that she doesn't think we should get rid of the filibuster. And somehow she wrongly stated that the filibuster is part of the Constitution, which of course it is not. And so I'm going to invite everybody on our Zoom today to also send Senator Sinema, Kirsten Sinema from Arizona, send her an email and tell her she's got to vote to get rid of the filibuster so that we can get the Equal Rights Amendment for women. And of course, all of these other great bills that are right now pending in the Senate, they are not going to pass unless we can get rid of the filibuster. So I think this is a job that we have to do. I have been so blessed, in addition to passing those laws way back there in the early 60s to get rid of deputy registrars, that we were also passed, I was able to pass a bill to have voting in the Spanish language, that people could get their driver's license in Spanish. And also another very important bill is that if you were a legal resident of the United States, if you had your green card and you were here legally, that you could actually get public assistance. And this is so important because then there are many women that were able to get aid to needy children, people who were disabled, blind, old people that were elderly, that they could get some kind of an old age pension. And this was made possible by removing that citizenship requirement for people that were legal residents of the United States. So we know right now we are in a very critical time in our country. We know that fascism has infected our political system and that it is getting worse. And so we know that now we have to step up. Whatever we were doing before, we've got to step it up. We've got to do more organizing. And once we learn all of this Zooming stuff and how to organize also through the internet, that we can reach more and more women and say to them, you've got to get involved. You've got to help us because we have got so much work to do. And I also want to mention too, I think you've probably heard, and I learned this when I was in Arizona, that teachers right now are being threatened. They are being told, I think this happened in Tennessee, it's already in Arizona, if any teacher makes any or tries to teach any controversial subject, which could be about the Equal Rights Amendment, about abortion rights for women, about the history of slavery or the discrimination against Mexican, that they can be fined $5,000 and they can lose their job. Because guess what? In Arizona, the teachers don't have tenure. So we can see that our educational system is also being threatened. And this is why it's so important that we take over some of those school board positions. I really want to urge anybody out here, if you can run for school board in your district, do that, because we've got to get women's studies, gender studies, civic studies, science. Yes, when we talk about global warming, this is about science. We've got to get these subjects into our school system. And I mentioned before civics. So labor studies, okay, to teach people why labor unions are important, how labor unions create the middle class of our society. And if we don't have labor unions, we don't have a democracy. So all of these subjects, and a lot of this has been taken out of our school system. Why? So people can be uninformed and not realize the racist history that we have in our country. I call it the Howard Zinn history, excuse me, or the contributions of women, again, to our society and to our history. So we have a lot of work to do, and I don't know if we have time, Lenny, for people to ask me questions. If we do, I'd be glad to answer them.
If you do have questions, put them in the chat real quick because Dolores is not able to hang out till the end. She has another meeting to go to. I'm not seeing questions in the chat, so I think I will thank you very much. The very first example I know of Dolores's lobbying ability was in 1963 when she was able to get AFDC and disability insurance for farm workers in California. And as you just heard, she was the leader of a delegation delivering those 15,000 communications to Senator Kristen Sinema. So that not only the ERA, but the voting rights legislation for the people, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, the Comprehensive Immigration Reform and Path to Citizenship, George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and so much more can be passed. All these things are essential.
Lenny, I might want to add just two more things, which I forgot to mention, is that unemployment insurance for farm workers. Would you believe that Ronald Reagan vetoed 3 times when it passed the legislature that farm workers could have unemployment insurance, when they finished the crop, so that they could have something to live on, so they wouldn't have to migrate to the next place, but in between seasons that they could collect unemployment insurance. Well, we finally got that passed. And also the right to organize, that farm workers could have the right to organize. And a big one, having toilets in the fields, which Lenny will remember, the farm workers did not have toilets out there. Can you imagine for the women what that was like when they had to be surrounded with somebody that would hold up a sheet or a towel or a circle of women when they had to do their business? And they're, many 20 miles away from the nearest gas station or bathroom. And so, and to this day, there are only 2 states in our union, the United States of America, that have the right to organize for farm workers, and that is Hawaii, because of the Longshoremen's Union, and California because of the work that we did with the Farm Workers Union. And it cost lives. 5 people were killed in the farm worker movement so that they could get the right to organize, to get unemployment insurance, to get toilets and cold water to drink and hand washing facilities. So I know that these challenges that we had in the past were hard. The challenges that we have currently are hard, but we know that as women, the one thing that we do have, we have the power to organize and to speak out, organize everybody that we can, and we can very definitely make the changes that we need to make. So we say, I know you've heard the phrase, but I'll say it, si se puede in Spanish means yes, we can. And Lenny, I would just like to remind every other women on here that just remember this, we have the power, okay? We have the power. And anytime any legislator, any senator, any city council person, school board member, if they're not doing the right thing, we as women have got to show up in person or with Zoom and emails. Just send them a ton of emails when we don't agree with what they're doing, because the constituents of a person that's in office, those are the ones that they listen to, because at the end of the day, votes count more than money. And we know that with our current system that we have right now, that money rules. And so eventually we also have to campaign to get campaign reform legislation so that only the millionaires or very wealthy can get elected, but that ordinary people and women like folks on our Zoom today, that they can take the power and they can be elected, okay? So I'm gonna ask all of you a question and you can shout it out. And the question is, who's got the power? And I want you to say, we've got the power. And when I say, what kind of power? I want you to say people power, okay? Can we do that? Even if we're muted?
Can't do that.
Okay, let's do it. Who's got the power?
We've got the power.
Power.
We do.
What kind of power?
People power.
All right, and it's a very special power with this organization, which is one of the oldest women's organizations that has been there forever, fighting for not only the rights of women, but for the rights of people everywhere. So thank you very much for inviting me. I feel very, very honored to be with you. And yes, we'll remember, yes, we can. Sí se puede. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much.
Sí se puede.
Sí se puede.
Sí se puede.
Thank you
Gracias.
so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Again,
you.
this is Legislative Advocacy Uniting for Effectiveness. where we're trying to develop sort of a unified grassroots WILP effort so that our branches can maybe work together to increase our influence on national legislation. Many WILP branches do legislative advocacy, and we can share our methods and our techniques and encourage other branches to do advocacy on issues. And in addition, we can consider working together to amplify our voices. I'm Lenny Villagomez-Reeves. My first organizing experience was with the United Farm Workers. Then I went to school. Then I did pediatric emergency medicine for many years. I'm active in WILP in the Fresno branch and nationally, where I co-chair the Cuba and the Bolivarian Alliance Committee. I'm the organizer of this presentation, but the idea didn't begin with me. Here's Jean Hayes to start us off.
Hi, everyone. That was a tough act to follow. Dolores said it all. However, I will bring the Fresno perspective of how we do it. Fresno's WILP Branch Legislative Committee has a long life. It was brought into existence by Ellie Bluestein, who founded our branch. And we've been going in one form or another since that time. And the longer we go on, the more we realize that, like all of you other branches, the importance of keeping in contact with our local, state, and national elected representatives is very important. Even more important is that they and their staff recognize our organization when we call or go for a visit. One staffer told us that a call, or better yet, a personal visit, is 100 times more effective than an email. Emails, she said, are just dragged up into a folder and put there, and they count the number, not the content, the number of them that they get. All you legislative committees know this, but some of you may not realize the impact of your personal communication. Not long ago, our Fresno Legislative Committee had a vision that we would like to see happen nationally, and we're so excited about this. And that is for all branches to concentrate on a single piece of legislation bi-monthly or monthly or during a period of time. We would then, after we decide on this, bombard members of Congress with, and that means that it can be local, it can be federal, it can be state. So keep this in mind too. We would bombard MOC with visits, calls, and emails, just to a lesser extent. We would visualize, then we can visualize a couple of them after we have saturated them all over branches all over the United States, meeting in the hallways. And I love this visualization. I hope it'll come to pass. One passing each other and say, did you get a call from those WILP women again about, and then he would mention the topic. And then he would say, I've spoken to 4 or 5 reps who have received calls too. I think they mean business. They're keeping their eyes on us, and I do mean us, not just you and me. Let's call a meeting and see if we can talk about this and come to consensus. That doesn't mean that we forget about local issues too, as I have mentioned. We could be doing the same thing at the same time on a local scale. And it just means that the bottom line is that we elect people to represent us, to express our views on how we want to be governed. Many times our representatives forget that. They think they can exist to the exclusion of the people that got them where they are. That's wrong. Many times our reps need to be reminded. We also want them to know that we're watching them, all of them, and uniting to carry out the wishes and best interests of the people, not just the moneyed corporate giants. Jane Addams did that in whatever ways that were possible for her. We can continue her legacy. We could have a branches team who gets ideas for a common legislative topic from its members and go from there. The important thing is that the elected representatives see our faces in their offices, on their phones, and that they know we are united, our branches all over the United States. So that's our branch wish.
Very nice.
You're muted. You're muted, Lenny.
Judith Shelton is our next speaker, and she's a Peace Camp director, arts illustrator, and adjunct faculty at Wayne State University, teaching integrating the arts into elementary classrooms in the School of Education. She's secretary in the Detroit branch of WILP, always a dancer, becoming a musician.
Thank you, Lenny. It's very nice to be here. Hello, everyone. And it's great that we can come together and discuss these very, very important issues. One of the things that occurred to us in the Detroit branch is that many people simply do not know how to advocate. So that's part of it. We wanted to educate them about advocacy and the whole process. And also we're strong in the power of the written word. And the other speakers have talked about letters and postcards, and that's exactly what we did. We drafted a letter to be sent to our legislators and asked everyone to send it out. And we made the letter adaptable so that everyone could send it to their specific representative. And Lenny can share that letter for you, and I'm sure you can copy it, and you would adapt it for your state and for your specific representatives. One of the things that we felt was powerful in the letter is that we identified right at the beginning what good work this particular person has already done. And then we went on from there to identify what the problem is and what the solution is. And in this situation, the problem is, of course, nuclear weapons, and the solution, of course, is not to have any. So this is a letter designed to go to every single representative and urge them to sign what is now the ban treaty, which is now actually law as of January 22nd this year. So it's actually illegal for the countries that have signed this, and 55 countries have. It's now illegal for people to have anything to do with nuclear weapons, even to store it. So that was one initiative that we did. And the second one is something that we call postcards and pizza. And the letter works because you can do that even during the pandemic. We did the postcards and pizza pre-pandemic, and we'll do it again after the pandemic ends. But it's an informal social gathering. We invited people to come together and learn some things. Again, we realized that people do not know about legislative processes. So we brought in people, someone who knows something about perhaps 3 or 4 critical issues, and each person spoke. And there's a table. People had postcards and pens and addresses, and they could write their representatives right there on the spot. And we did that 2 different ways. One way is to have each speaker speak to everyone sequentially, and the other one was to have a speaker at a table and for people to rotate around issues and those speakers. And they both worked, and that one, of course, is more fun than writing a letter by yourself at home. What we learned is people were really, really grateful to have this support and this guidance, this direction, and it made them a little more comfortable to find out information on their own. The unfortunate thing is we can't measure our impact. We simply cannot measure our impact. But we do totally support the importance of people getting a letter in their hand that's gone through the post office that we still have. And we support people getting mini postcards. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you, Lenny.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that. We will next have Jan Korterman, and Jan is a member of the Des Moines branch and serves on its leadership team. The branch works with other activists in their community to power the change necessary to achieve climate justice and peace. And she will talk about 3 efforts the branch is currently active in and the tactics they've used to move the politicians at the local and state levels. Prior to her retirement, Jan worked for over 30 years as a union organizer and she has served as the WILP U.S. Treasurer since January of 2017. Jan
Thank you,
Carter.
Lenny. Thank you. Well, as Lenny said, I'm going to talk about 3 initiatives that our branch has worked with, and these are at the local and state levels. And the first one is our Sustainability Task Force. And I want to recognize our member who took the lead on that. So Carolyn Ewing-Higg-Walker led the effort to push our city council to agree that climate change really is an existential threat and something that they really should take action on. Carolyn, along with a small group of activists, including other WILFers, created this Des Moines Citizen Task Force on Sustainability. And the goal was to keep the momentum and the resolution on climate change that were going to be acted on at the Paris talks to push for follow through by our city. So they started in the fall of 2015, just before the UN Climate Change Conference, which took place in December. And right away in January, a large representative of our representation of our members and other groups went to that first city council meeting after Paris and lobbied for 2 things: the formation by the city of a citizen task force on sustainability, and to have the Des Moines pledge to lower its greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2040. So the task force had enough support to get the city to pass the first request pretty easily, but the second one took longer. And Carolyn called on us and our membership to help on various work groups, to attend more city council meetings en masse when she needed us. She and others met with city council members, city staff, and the city manager one-on-one. She also recommended that people join city commissions and committees. And as we probably think about this, those groups are always asking for volunteers. And Carolyn put her money where her mouth is, and she belongs now to the Stormwater Advisory Committee. And after this all worked, this started in 2015. Well, just this past January, in a unanimous vote, the city of Des Moines they passed a resolution that sets a timeline for several milestones in the shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources, including wind and solar power. The city aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 45% between 2010 and 2030. And by 2035, the city hopes to achieve 100% 24/7 carbon-free electricity. And that would be the first. It's a goal that no other city in America has committed to. And I think Carolyn's work was instrumental in that. And so was ours. A second issue we've worked on that is also a responsibility of our city council was to move them to prohibit racially biased policing. And one of our members, Janice Hawkins, is part of that. Janice is here with us tonight. Thank you for being here, Janice. She has spoken at several city council meetings and has led some of the other action steps that this Racial Justice Committee does. They did their research as a committee, and they were able to prove that 61% of the arrests in Des Moines were of Black people, but that they only make up 11% of the Des Moines population. Along the way, the team started conversations about the injustices and the corresponding harms at every stage of the criminal process when police respond to drug use as aggressively as the law allows, something that falls disproportionately on young Black and brown men. They recognize this work as a step to short circuit the school to prison pipeline. And again, the city has been slow to engage in the conversation. They've said, well, it's a state issue, it's a state law, the state will have to take care of it. And the racial justice team has responded forcefully. They've come up with examples showing where the charges for very minute amounts of marijuana have taken place, and that Blacks are more often to be stopped. Then their cars are searched, and a small amount of marijuana has been found, and they recognize that. The committee has pointed that out as another form of profiling. The chief of police has not been willing to even meet with the committee. And lo and behold, he's a Republican. And like so many other things in our country right now that we all are going through, we all are coming into contact with this. It's not just the issue, but whether or not he'd even talk about the issue is so partisan. And in this case, again, partisan as we so often see. The committee's also asked for training to counteract bias against Black and brown people and they've discovered some illegal acts by the trainers that have come from the ranks of the police, and they were able to point that out. And they've exposed it, and actually the city is now contracting with a different group to provide that training. And then also in January, the city council approved a racial profiling ordinance that prohibits biased policing. And this was after years of persistence by the team. And as the NAACP president for Iowa and Nebraska has stated, it's not perfect, but we're working towards a better solution. And this is definitely a good step in that direction. Like Carolyn, she called on the rest of us in Wilf to appear at city council meetings. She's also arranged to have speakers at our meetings, to connect with her with us and us with her, and to also update us. I also want to share their committee's website, justvoiceiowa.org, justvoiceia.org, and I'll put it in the chat when I'm done here. It has data that's nationwide as well as local, and they also have a quiz on there that I took myself today. It really gets you thinking about the problem that Black people, and particularly young Black men, face and what you can do about it. Our third effort is one I'm particularly passionate about. As Lenny said, I grew up on a family farm here in Iowa, and I can verify that nothing tops work next to family and friends, watching those crops grow and being surrounded by animals. But today's farms are more factory than farm. And that's why I represent our branch on a steering committee member of the Iowa Alliance for Responsible Ag. The Alliance advocates for responsible and respectful land stewardship and livestock production, and we are calling for a statewide moratorium on new or expanding confined animal feeding operations, or CAFOs. And raw, and I know that you guys are aware of this, but raw, untreated animal sewage contaminates our waterways. There are runoffs, there are spills, there are cracks in confinement pits. And currently here in Iowa, we have over 750 impaired waterways out of our 856. And so we tied the moratorium bill to this crisis by saying that the moratorium will continue until there are less than 100 impaired waterways, to really draw the picture between contaminated water and CAFOs. Our members have been a part of this moratorium campaign, and it's included distributing petitions at meetings and farmers markets and the state fair. We've shown a film about 50 times across the state. Us and other coalition members, it's called Right to Harm. We showed it here to Wilf members and had a good response when we did that. And it focuses on the health issues of CAFOs. We've also been fighting for more than 3 years at the Hill to lobby. We've had press conferences and lobby days to build support for the bill. One feature I want to highlight when we do our lobby days is that our Raging Grannies have let us sing along at the lobby days, and they distribute the music to everybody who attends. And it's really well received when they do 2 songs and people just sing along with us. And I just want to give you a hint of one of them. Remember the song, Give Me a Home? Let's see. Oh, give me a home. How's it go? Anyway, give me a home.
Buffaloes roam.
Where the buffalo roam. That's it. Thank you, Darian, our singer. Thank you so much. Well, this one says, oh, give me a home where the waters don't foam. And the rest of the words go along that vein. This year we added something new I just want to talk about real briefly. It's because of COVID, it's worked really well. We hold lobby meetings with our state and House Senate members with up to 6 or so of our members from their district. And we brief our members before we go into these lobby meetings, and they each speak and they say, yes, I'm a member of your district. Here's where I live. And here's why this moratorium is important to me. It's been very effective. We got started with it this year. We probably did half a dozen meetings, and it's something we're going to do again next year. And I want to leave by letting you know that you'll hear more about this issue from not just our branch, but also the Triangle branch. The 2 of us are putting on a workshop, a presentation, and that's going to be Sunday. And it's called It All Runs Downhill. So please join us for that. And Lenny, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Our next speaker is going to be Mary Beth Gardam, And Mary Beth Gardam set up Women for Peace Iowa, later joining WILPF US Des Moines branch. She was attracted to WILPF because of its long history of connecting economic justice and human rights to the pursuit of peace. And she served on the WILPF US Board of Directors and is the chair of the WILPF Women, Money, and Democracy Committee. Mary Beth
Thanks,
Gardam.
thanks, Lenny. When I joined WILPF Des Moines, the same branch as Jan, in 2003, we had one branch member who was what we called the legislative monitor. She was tasked with reporting on the bills in the state legislature and the federal Congress that resonated with the goals and mission of WILPF US and specifically our branch. She was very good at her job. She would report monthly and bring pre-addressed postcards for folks to write short messages of support for bills that were current and deserved our support, or to oppose bills that were outside of the goals that we had set for a better community and a better world. So that woman, I cannot recall her name. She passed away rather unexpectedly, and there was no one who took her place. I suspect that that happened in a lot of branches. I know some branches continue to use these sorts of legislative actions to reach out to the community, and we just heard about a number of them. For really big issues, some of our branches have taken tables at farmers markets or in libraries or college campuses to get folks to sign petitions or send postcards or register to vote. The Detroit branch, you heard, had success with their pizza and postcard planning events. And I can't imagine that it wouldn't be popular with college kids to buy them free pizza and ask them to come by and sign some postcards. I've noticed that in recent years, the legislative efforts that WILPF US requests our members to do have been plentiful, but kind of scattered. Members get more and more requests for taking action and making legislative calls or contacts from a variety of different issue committees when certain bills come up for a vote. And it seems like these requests are sort of all over the place and a bit unfocused. So I worry that we might exhaust people by asking them too often or in less coordinated ways to support legislative action. And I worry too that when we do make an effort to contact elected officials about the issues, we do that as individuals, but we usually don't remember to identify ourselves as WILPF members. I love the vision that we heard before about how wonderful it would be from Jean Hayes to run into legislators who knew about us because we'd been bugging them as WILPF all across the country. So that's kind of a lost opportunity to raise visibility of WILPF with elected officials if we don't identify ourselves as WILPF members. And it gives us more credibility, it gives us more strength, it amplifies our message. So that made me think about the Fresno branch's method of concentrating their member legislative actions on a week or month by month basis and focus on a single issue. They agree in advance and together make calls and write letters or send emails or write letters to the editor as a branch of WILPF. And this raises the visibility of both the issue and the branch. So I call this kind of plan WILPF getting loud. Imagine if we could get loud enough so people actually knew our name and knew what we stood for and kind of said, oh God, here comes another one of those WILPF women. I wondered if Fresno could help organize that kind of concentrated, focused, strategic advocacy effort on a month-by-month basis, collecting all the requests from different committees and sending one email to our members once a week or once a month that had either a weekly action or a monthly action that we agreed to take together as well. So far, no one has had the bandwidth to undertake that kind of organizing. But I wonder what you all think about how we might go about this, or even if it's worth doing, maybe it isn't, either through focused emails or phone calls or written letters to legislators and members of Congress. Most recently, I made contact with an organization in DC that has many of the same goals and works on many of the same issues. They have paid professional lobbyists on staff dedicated to specific projects, mostly about economic justice issues, but also about human rights, immigration, and other like-minded socially responsible issues, all domestic here in the United States. I kind of casually open conversations with them because they seem to have the technological capacity to do a lot of this legislative action online. But they also have a network of activists around the country working on legislative and congressional efforts around the country. The organization was founded about 50 years ago when they began. When they began, they had a peace component focused on ending the Vietnam War and abolishing nuclear weapons. But over time, they morphed into more of an economic justice organization. I learned recently that they are proposing to their board that they reconsider returning to their peace roots. I haven't heard if their board met yet to discuss this or not, but wouldn't it be great if they did? Like I said, they have members scattered through the country in a network of support. In fact, the name of this organization is Network, and they are the Catholic Social Action Lobby. Until recently, they were headed by Sister Simone Campbell from the Nuns on the Bus fame. Naturally, there are areas where our members would differ with a Catholic lobbying group. But I couldn't help but wonder if we couldn't collaborate in the areas where there's so much agreement between our two organizations. And in a time of limited resources and the need for gearing up quickly, I was wondering if it made sense to consider some kind of limited partnership to build our legislative action muscle. What might that look like? So that's what I wanted to talk to you about today and see what you all think, kind of take the temperature in the room.
Thank you, Mary Beth, and thank you also very much. Well, there's going to be a question and answer period, and I would like to ask all the panelists to go ahead and unmute themselves, and we'll try to pick questions out of the chat first, and then as many questions as we have time for will be great. And now it's time to go to work on voting rights, on disarmament and peace with justice, on police and incarceration reform, on workers' rights, on migrant and refugee rights, the ERA, women's rights, reproductive justice, environmental democracy, and elimination of structural racism and corporate racial capitalism, among other things. So let's get started. Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask is that I, for some reason, am not able to post Detroit's letter in the chat, although I can screen share it till the cows come home. So if someone from the Detroit branch could just copy and paste it in the chat. And so because people have asked for it. And so there's a question for Judith. How many reps do you reach with one action?
Well, it was hard to say because not only did we use the letter in our branch, but we gave it to other peace organizations for them to use, and they sent it out. So we don't really know. We didn't have a reporting system. In our branch, we reached 3.
And this question is also for you, Judith. Do you target legislators individually for multiple interactions in an advocacy campaign, or do you prefer a blanket mass contact approach? Which, in your view, is more effective?
Well, we can't know the impact of what we do. That's part of the problem. You know, we can send letters and we can call and we can visit, but we don't really know how all of that makes a direct impact. And because of the style, the adapted letter, we don't know how many we reached, and we don't know how many representatives received more than one letter. We do have a total of two people in Michigan who've signed. So we're thrilled.
You're ahead of the rest of us, I think, in many ways. Are there other questions? There were questions earlier for Dolores, but they didn't get asked. Do any of you want to ask those questions of other panelists? Okay.
It would be helpful if people put their questions in all capitals so that it's easy for you to spot them in the chat.
The questions I remember, there was a question about the Green New Deal, and there was a question about the Sunrise Youth Movement. Does anyone want to comment on either of those? And there was a comment for Dolores as well about how important, and I think this often gets forgotten, so I am going to go ahead and say it, how important the leadership and participation of the Filipino farm workers was in the United Farm Workers and in the farm workers strike and movement here in the Central Valley. Yeah. So what do people think are the single most effective things to do to get your legislators' attention, not counting, bad words? Well, I am not hearing an answer. Jan.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to use the examples that I spoke of at our local level, and it just took so much time and so much patience and so much, coming at it from every direction. So, it's like we were talking at our one by one we grow meeting. Don't be afraid of a no the first time it did. You go back and go back and go back and keep the pressure on.
Judy Adams, do you have a question?
Let's see, I did want to ask a question of Dolores about her view of the Sunrise Movement, the youth movement, that I admired that they studied mass political movements, demonstrations, and so forth to figure out how to organize themselves. So I think that on a smaller scale, when we visit congressional offices, we can do two things. We can either have a contingent come in, make an appointment, talk about issues, or we can have a demonstration outside of the office and ask the senator or representative to come out and address the crowd with some clear issues, such as the TPNW or climate change.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I think someone has also, Sue Hilton has commented that people really sat up and took notice when they brought the raging grannies. So I think what we're left with as we wind up, because we are in our last couple of minutes, we started pretty close to on time, which was remarkable. And so we need to end now. But the question that all of us are raising now is, how do we do this? And so I think this should not end with this presentation, and it should carry forward into what we've all been talking about, an effort to figure out how the branches, not in place of the work that they already do, but just as a fairly smooth and easy coordinated additional effort, can act as WILF on an issue maybe once a month. I think the only good thing that we've gotten out of the pandemic is that we've all learned to Zoom, and we've all realized that it is possible to meet across different time zones and different branches. And so let's work this out. If no one person has the ability to take this action and carry it forward, perhaps we all as a bunch do. So I thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much, Lenny.
Yep, thank
Thanks,
you.
Lenny.
Thank
Thank
Good
you.
night, and thanks
Fun.
everyone.
Thank
for
you.
your
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Tomorrow at 5. Save the chat.
Hearing